Hi.
Evening, evening. Right. I guess it's pretty fair to say that a lot of us would not know anything about hip-hop if it wasn't for this man. I guess the way we talk, the way we walk, how we dress, and the music we listen to is greatly amplified by his work. And in order to give you a bit of perspective, because a lot of what you heard here is pretty theoretical, we brought a little video clip from a film from 81, I believe it was shot.
Yes, 1981.
It only got released a lot later, right?
Yes, the movie was shot in 81. The investors had some big problems, so the movie got thrown into a back room somewhere. And in the early 2000s, they got it all together and brought everybody back because they'd lost the audio. So we had to redub all the audio in the movie. And the movie came out, and it's called Downtown 81.
Before we roll this, because you will see a lot of people in the actual movie, if you're ever going to see it, that you will know inside out by now, but then hardly anyone would know them.
Yeah, basically this is a movie about, I think it was about a day in the life of Jean-Michel Basquiat, who was a good friend of mine, and we hung out on the downtown scene in Lower Manhattan, and this movie captured that whole lifestyle that we were living at the time, and this is a scene that we did together for that movie.
Roll the tape.
Hey, sexy, you like it? It's art.
Hey, man, that's private property.
Hey, my man, I'm a taxpayer. I can paint any way I want to paint.
Besides, it's legal.
Another commission?
Sort of a commission. We're doing it for some friends of ours.
It's half commission, half donation.
Who's inside?
Yeah, this DJ from the Bronx, man.
Any good?
He's serious, man. You want to check him out.
Missed a spot.
Who are you, Henry Godzilla? That's stupid. He said about Freddy Godzilla.
Check it out. I got 81 rhymes with 81 Jews, a 81 room mansion, 81 food, 81 scholarship from 81 school, but I gave all 81 to 81 food. 81 link chains with 81 rings, took 81 crowns from 81 kings, did 87 shows in 81 nights, cleared 81 grand in 81 nights, 81 limousines, 81 garages, 81 visas and master charges, brought 81 girls down to the knees. Sucker MC, blind 81 women right up on the wall. In 81 minutes, I'll be rocking the mall. Do 87 times, say 87 rhymes. Have 81 more women saying their minds on mine. Appreciate the man that I am, but else scram before you can feel the backhand. And me on the mic, and you on the floor. We gonna rock 2 times more for sure. Little throw your hands up in the air, y'all. You can wave them like you just don't care, y'all. Fab Five is in the house, and Jean-Michel is in the house. Throw your hands in the air. Let's freak to the beat. Get up if you want to get down, cause we got the flyest music in town. You can't hear.
Now that was one happening scene and one party really going off. How many people were there?
It wasn't that many people. It was in a small, like, social club, a very small space in the Lower East Side, 1981. So this is an example of, like, I guess one of the things that I did was I introduced the culture of hip hop, the idea to my friends on the downtown scene, people like, you know, Blondie and other cool people from the Talking Heads that were very open to it. So I turned Jean-Michel onto this, and we were all into it. And this movie was just showing that aspect. The rest of the movie is a lot of new wave and just how we lived and how we tried to survive that time in Lower Manhattan.
Speaking of new wave, what is the track that the MC is actually rapping over there?
Yeah, that's an instrumental version of Blondie's Rapture, which is, yeah, I guess that was kind of a big development. They were people that I'd met. They were very open to these ideas, to this new culture I was telling them about. And so, surprisingly to me, they went and made an album, the Auto American album, and then made their version of a rap song. And Debbie did this rap, and she starts off the rap saying, you know, Fab Five Freddie told me everybody's fly. And
So what on earth did you mean by that?
What did I mean by that? Well, basically, I would be explaining to them what was going on, the culture, the lingo of this new culture happening mostly in the ghettos of Upper Manhattan, Harlem, and the Bronx. And they were very fascinated. So I was like, you know, there's fly guys and there's fly girls, and Flash is fast, meaning DJ Grandmaster Flash. And Debbie just made her own thing up, which was kind of funny, kind of goofy, and kind of cool. And it was the first #1 record in America and many other places around the world that introduced us to rap music and hip-hop culture.
Well, speaking of #1 records, there's some figures relatively fresh off the press which said that last year, #1 albums in Germany alone that are considered hip-hop, not the ones that are long sellers and stay in the top 10, but just #1 albums. There was 11 hip-hop albums that went to #1 last year, all German artists. And combined, even if you take the Fanta 4 out of that equation, which are debatable whether they qualify as hip-hop or not, they would still combinedly outsell Helene Fischer. So if that's a sign of hope for anyone, I guess it's the culture that started. And, but at the same time, what I quite liked about that line is that Debbie somehow embodied one of the core aspects that I guess you tried to translate to them is he told me. Like, I didn't discover that, I didn't know, because I'm Debbie Harry and I don't know everything. It's like, I got someone that told me. How much did you feel to be like some sort of an ambassador for a different type of culture?
Well, you know, I've been called a lot of things, ambassador, you know, cultural avatar. I see myself as an instigator and a disruptor, primarily. And because, you know, at that time in New York City, people were very polarized racially, so there wasn't a lot of intermixing between people of different ethnic backgrounds. That's just a New York City thing at the time. You know, Italian people stayed in their neighborhoods, you know, Puerto Rican people stayed there, and that's just how it was. And so a lot of times, you know, I just wanted to introduce people to these new things going on because I felt it was very, very valuable, very viable. I thought myself primarily as a painter who had interest in other forms of expression, I was looking to show people that this thing called graffiti, which was everybody hated at the time, which is somewhat understandable, I wanted to show that among the people doing it, there was some creative talent, passion, energy, if you would just take a close look. And so people on the new wave scene, like Blondie, like David Byrne, Talking Heads, Glenn O'Brien, many other cool people were very open to this. In fact, another thing that I played a big part in is the first movie on hip-hop culture is a film called Wild Style. And yes, this is, anyway, yeah, he has a box set of some of the, this just came out. This is a compilation of some of the original music for the movie that I produced. And so basically we were trying to get this movie made to show that there's a new culture happening in New York City, and we were trying to make this movie to show it. And people in New York, we were having meetings, they were laughing and not taking us serious, but ZDF here...
ZDF, like...
How do you say it?
ZDF, yeah.
ZDF, thank you. Took it very seriously and gave us the first money back in like 1980 to go into production and make this movie Wild Style. So before the movie was even aired in America, it was on ZAF here in Germany, and that is part of the reason why Germany has a deep connection to this culture.
Which is kind of interesting, because that's one of the facts that is rarely, if not at all, documented before today, that there was actually, I mean, ZDF is a state-funded organization, so German taxpayer money actually brought hip-hop to the world, which is, hey.
Amazing, yes. Yes, we love it. And then also, you know, going to a film festival in Spain, I met a guy named Trini Trimpop, who was one of the founders of the Totenhosen. We had a wild time in Germany, in Spain, hanging out, getting to know each other, introducing him to this new culture. 2 months later, I get a call from him. They had gotten signed, I think, to Capitol Records, the band, the Totenhosen, and a part of their deal was they had to put out one of their early punk records, which is a record about this drink called Bamalunda. You guys know about Bamalunda? And so they said they didn't want to recreate the record the exact way they did it, so they asked me would I come and help them make a rap version, which I did, and that was called Hip Hop Bommy Bop. And the last time I was in Munich 30 years ago was to promote that record. We went into a film studio here and filmed a little clip so that people could see us, the song on German television. And so that's my history with Munich in Germany.
Coming back to Wild Style, what was so specific about the music and what made like a bona fide record collector like Kenny Dope go and, damn, I want to bring that back and showcase to the people what the music actually was? Rumor has it you had a bit of a role in producing.
Yeah, well, you know, when we were making the movie, this was very early on in the development of hip-hop music. And so the idea of sampling had not yet started. And so we were basing, my idea for the music was let's do what they do at the parties, which is cut in little pieces of different records from the 70s, from the 60s, these funky little breaks that a DJ can connect, mix, and extend. But the director of the movie, my co-conspirator, Charlie Ahhhhh, was like, no, we should make our own music. We argued, we debated. I agreed with him, and I said, I'll go and make these records. So I kind of put together some musicians and some friends and made what I felt were records that felt like what the hip-hop DJs were doing at that time. And so when the movie came out, and up until relatively recently, people were always looking for these records, thinking these were some original records that had been done, that we took and used and sampled. And so these records were never really released. And a record producer named Kenny Dope collaborated with us, and this little box set, these are about 7 45 vinyl records, which there's a resurgence in 45s, by the way, if any of you guys are DJs. And so these are all of the original records that I created that have been re-released. And this box set, which is amazing, tells the story of how we made this happen. So he's a guy that's smart enough to have this, which is amazing.
These things perform a lot better than what your hedge funds are telling you, so you might want to think about that. It actually gives people a job as well, so it's a good thing. Support the recording industry. No, but what's really interesting about the actual process is you actually recreated stuff alone with actual musicians, which is kind of the same thing that many producers have to do these days, because when they try and go back and sample the stuff, like the legal situation is so complicated that a lot of the times they just can't get the actual sample cleared, so they would have to go and recreate it. So you were a little bit ahead of the curve in that respect. Yeah,
it turned out to be a pretty smart thing to do because the culture of sampling became huge, and then record companies, after many rap records came out back in the early 90s, it came to a point when record companies began to sue or artists that did the original music said, wait a minute, this guy's got a hit record with my music and he didn't pay me. So that became a serious problem and then created a whole, a need to create music that feels like that. There's a guy named Adrian Young, who you might know about, who's got all the old recording equipment from the 70s and plays all these instruments, who's making music that really feels like that era.
Another thing that people might know you for is a TV show that came on Tom Preston's platform, Yo MTV Raps.
Right, yeah, Yo MTV Raps. That was the first television show, well, in America and then around the world, that showcased hip-hop music, and I would interview various artists from Snoop and Dr. Dre to Tupac to everybody, yeah.
I mean, for the elder amongst us, that was at a time when we just left the dark ages of having just 3 TV channels over here, and you had to have like a massive dish, and that was like a big magnifying telescope into a different continent, which was America. And for a lot of people around the world, that represented hip-hop culture. Can you talk to us about the setting of the show and what you were trying to achieve editorially?
Yeah, you know, at the time when they asked me to host the MTV Raps, which was shocking because prior to that, MTV in America was really not showcasing really any black music, you know, with the exception of maybe Michael Jackson. And so then they asked me to come on and deal with the most cutting edge thing, not just in black music, but in music culture, period. And at that time, the VJs on MTV were pretty much always cooped up in the studio at MTV, 2-3 hour stretches introducing different videos. And I didn't want to be seen in that same context. So I said, well, if you want me to do this, I'll be most comfortable being on the street. If somebody's making music in their basement, I want to be in the basement, in the studio. And so that was the first time that MTV went outside, if you will, and I was happy to, you know, be in that capacity. I was more comfortable kind of going wherever the artists were. Like, sometimes, a lot of people's favorite Yo MTV Rap show, just as an example, is the first time NWA, Dr. Dre, and all these people are seen on TV is with me in Compton in Los Angeles, standing at this sign like, welcome to Compton. We get on a truck and they take me on a tour through the hood and just show me and then showing America how they live, where they live, and you know, they would become one of the most important groups in rap, introducing us to the lifestyle of, you know, the hood in California, Compton. In fact, the first big single was straight out of Compton, which was huge.
So they just left the world-class Wrecking Crew eyeliner behind at that stage, right?
Exactly. And, you know, Eazy-E had 1 or 2 records out, and then here comes the group. Here's me standing with Dr. Dre. So many of these pieces live on YouTube. If you guys are not aware, you can just search and see some of these moments, which is pretty amazing.
So let's imagine you're sitting by the fireside. You may have had a beverage or two. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. What are the Yo MTV Rap stories that you really like to tell to folks?
Boy, Yo MTV Rap stories. There's many. You know, for me, one of the most exciting things was, I was naturally very curious, was being able to go to California to see what these guys were doing, to see how they live, where it came from. Because as you know, all of this culture was developed in New York City. So now we have people in many different states. I remember there's a group out of Houston, Texas called the Ghetto Boys. And I remember one of the members of the group was a very small, like a dwarf, midget person. His name was Bushwick Bill. And I remember going, well, how am I'm going to have these 2 guys that are normal size and then a very small person. And I remember talking to him before we started to film, and I said, well, you know, I want to just make sure I am able to understand, you know, your background. And he says, Fab, I'm from Brooklyn. I go, what do you mean you're from Brooklyn? I'm from the Bushwick section of Brooklyn, and that's why my name is Bushwick Bill. And he even lived next door to a cousin of mine, so it made it very comfortable, and it was just great, you know, being able to get familiar. And then they took me into the ghetto areas where they were from in Houston. There's a place called the 5th Ward. I've had experiences where I would go to Europe and interview rappers in London, you know, many different cities across America. It's just fascinating to see people in their own environments and get a sense of what inspires them to make the music that they make and how that would just become a thing that we would see and love.
Early on, you spoke a lot in rhyme. And I haven't heard you bust a single rhyme so far today. Was your rhyming in any way informed or influenced when you started to see people outside of the tri-state area?
I'm sorry, one more time.
When you, like early on, you were known to speak in rhyme a lot.
Haha, yes,
Rhyming,
a little bit here and there, yeah.
And when you were starting to go to all these different territories,
Right.
how did your speech change?
Oh, it didn't change, in fact, but you know, the interesting thing about rap music for America, and I'm sure the same thing for Germany, people in different areas have different slang and different expressions which weren't that known to people. Like, for instance, people in New York weren't that aware of how some of the slang from Los Angeles and LA. So we got to learn their slang, and it was interesting. It's just like learning how to talk a new language, and the music was the way that you would learn.
I guess before we get shut up here, one thing I'd really... Oh. Yeah, we
gotta
hurry
move
along.
Move it right
We hurry
along. Yes,
All right.
yes.
But, and there might be an audience question or two as well, but before we hand the mic over, I guess at Yo MTV Raps, you saw a lot of future megastars a long time before they even could spell the word Lamborghini. And like, what did you think? Can you recall when you had, for example, like an early Busta Rhymes when he was with Leaders of the New School?
Right.
Because that was a really remarkable performance where people on the screens were just like...
Yeah, Busta Rhymes, he was in a group called Leaders of the New School, and they debuted. We did a show with them when they first came out, which was very exciting. But the really interesting thing, about a year later, when they're about to release their second album, the group literally broke up on the show while we were taping. Busta had become artist that did a lot of solo cameos on other people's records. When the group got back together, they were like, hey, what about us? And there was some disagreements, and the group literally broke up right on the show.
We can't end on a sad note like that. We need an audience question here, please.
Hi, I just have a question about like the biggest rap stars right now with Iggy Azalea and Drake and Macklemore, which are neither from the culture you were from or from totally different environment. Do you feel some type of way about it, or how do you see that rap is so far in the mainstream right now?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You know, artists have been influenced, have been inspired. You know, Iggy Azalea, I know she's from Australia. Macklemore, I believe, is from Seattle, Washington. I mean, I'm a person, personally, the artists that I'm attracted to are really good lyricists. So, I mean, I guess as far as MCs not from the culture, but it's kind of hard to say not from the culture because, you know, we all listen to what each other does. And so the first white rap group to become really big, I was good friends with those guys because they were all in the same part of New York City, and they were a group called the Beastie Boys. So I was friends with those guys and watched them develop and seen them blow up and become very, very big and bring something different and unique, another sensibility to it all. So basically, if you can bring something new to it or really be at the top of your game with the skills, I think it's okay. And I think Eminem was one of those people who also who came in with like incredible skills that nobody could really deny. So I think if your skills are right, but now in some current rap, to be pop and to have like a pop song and to kind of, I don't know, it's not my favorite thing, but you know, I let people live and do how they want to do. It's only music.
Well then, would you join me please in thanking for the contribution to culture, Fab Five Freddie, everybody.
Thank you, it's great to be here. I love DLD.